So welcome to the Parents' Evening today on Wednesday, the 3rd of November for the first year engineering in UCD. My name is Aoife Ahern, Professor Aoife Ahern, and I'm the college principal in the College of Engineering and Architecture, and I'm also the Dean of Engineering here in UCD. And I'm going to be hosting you this evening, but we have a number of other people who will be speaking as well, so you won't have to listen to me all the time. As you know, we had hoped to have this event in person. And when we have this in person in normal times, it gives you an opportunity to see the building where the students are studying, where your sons and daughters are coming in to study. And it also gives you an opportunity to meet some of the academics who are teaching in stage one and have a look around the place. But unfortunately, given the current situation and the rise in COVID cases, we really felt that this safest option was to stay online this year. And I hope that you can bear with us for that. And the advantage of this, however, is that some people who may not have been able to travel to UCD actually get the opportunity to listen to this event. So in terms of what we're hoping to do today and what our schedule is, as I said, there's more than me just speaking today. I'm Professor Aoife Ahern, and I'm going to give the introduction to engineering in UCD. I'll then hand over to my colleague, Dr. Neil Murphy, who's the Programme Director of DN150, which is UCD Engineering. And he's going to talk to you a little bit about the programme pathways and the careers that your sons and daughters will have as they go through. I'll then hand to Dr. Julia Marr, who is our student advisor and who's going to talk to you about the very important aspect of college and university supports that are available to the students. And then to Deborah Heaney and Shelley Smith, who are working in our college programme office here in UCD. Okay. So as I said, first of all, we're going to have the introduction to engineering and what it's about and what your sons and daughters will have here in engineering. Okay, so who am I and why am I here as the Dean of Engineering? So just to give you a bit of my background, I have a Bachelor's of Engineering degree from Trinity College Dublin. I graduated in 1998 and my degree is in civil engineering. After that, I went on to do a PhD in University College London, again in civil engineering, more specifically in transportation engineering, which I completed in 2001, so quite a long time ago. And I've spent most of my career, well, all of my career afterwards in academia, first as a lecturer in Trinity, and since 2003 as a lecturer here in UCD. So in that time, I've been the head of the School of Civil Engineering from 2015 to 2019. And since 2019, I've been the college principal of the College of Engineering and Architecture. So that's the head of the college incorporating our engineering and architecture schools. So just to let you know, obviously this, unfortunately, we still have to keep putting this up at the moment in terms of what's happening around COVID and the advice and the support that's available to students. And you can see there the link on the website on our slides here about what supports are available to your sons and daughters in terms of COVID. And obviously it's something that we take very seriously, and their safety is something that we also take very seriously while they're here on campus. And there's links to the kind of amenities and supports that they can access while here. As you also know, UCD is one of the universities that has had a much more on-campus presentation, or much more on-campus presence than many other universities since September. So we have everybody back on campus for lectures and laboratories. And in order to ensure that they're safe, we continue to do this, we have face coverings as mandatory for all our teaching and learning events. I'm sure your sons and daughters have probably told you about this already. Also in all our libraries and in all the internal spaces of the campus for everyone, not just the students, for staff and visitors to UCD as well. And that is checked quite carefully. We have additional staff on campus as well to ensure that we have people complying with those rules around mask wearing. And that has been very successful for us so far. And I think that most of our students are very happy to be back on campus. And for your sons and daughters in particular, I think to be able to be on campus in their stage one is extremely important to get that full university experience. Okay, so let's move on to talk about what the UCD College of Engineering and Architecture is, and more specifically, what UCD Engineering is. So the College of Engineering and Architecture actually has 6 schools in it, and the School of Architecture, Planning and Environmental Policy is a school that we're not going to spend any time on today, but it is part of our college. And in addition to that, we have our 5 engineering schools. So they are the School of Biosystems and Food Engineering, the School of Chemical and Bioprocess Engineering, the School of Civil Engineering, the School of Electrical and Electronic Engineering, and the School of Mechanical and Materials Engineering. And these schools represent the disciplines in which your students, in which the students can study as they go through the program. We're located across the campus in a number of different buildings. Some of you may have been to UCD. Some of you may have walked through UCD at various times. For others of you, you may not know UCD at all. So just to give you an idea of where we are, one of our main buildings, for example, would be the Engineering and Material Science Centre, which is located close to the N11. For those of you who know UCD, that's as you come off the exit of the N11 into UCD. It's one of the first buildings you'll see there at the moment, behind quite a lot of construction and a building site. And in that building there, you will see chemical and bioprocess engineering, electrical and electronic engineering, mechanical and materials engineering. Our School of Biosystems and Food Engineering is located in the Agricultural and Food Science Centre, which is more towards the centre of the campus. And then Newstead is where our Civil and Structural Engineering department is, and that's located back towards the Clonskee side of UCD. And again, for any of you who know UCD or who might know the campus, that is the old Phillips factory located at the back. And the students in engineering will be located across these buildings, but initially in stage 1, you'll probably find that for the most part, they have lectures in other parts of the university because they're a large class of 350 students. And obviously we need to have lecture theatres that are large enough to hold them. As they move into their different disciplines, whatever they choose, they'll spend more time in the building that is home to their particular subject or their particular discipline. Very excitingly, though, as well, in terms of engineering, we have new buildings coming on stream. We have a Centre for Creativity, which will be in place in 3 years' time. So hopefully your sons and daughters will have an opportunity to experience that building as well. So what are the kind of disciplines that they might experience or what they might choose to do in UCD? Well, we have a very wide range. And for some of you who might have been to the open day talks that we would have done last November or the November before, you might remember me saying to you or to your children at the time that one of the reasons UCD is such a good choice for students looking at an engineering as a particular career is because of that wide diversity of disciplines and choices that we have in UCD. So we have the choices of civil engineering, structural engineering with architecture, biomedical engineering, chemical and biochemical engineering, electrical and electronic engineering, and mechanical engineering. And these different disciplines also break down into sub-disciplines and become more focused, more deeper in their knowledge, I think you could say, as the students go through the programs and deeper into their careers. What makes an engineer? Well, a lot of that is about the kind of education that they experience in UCD. What we're doing with engineers and what makes them a little bit different to people who are doing science, for example, is we're looking at applying scientific and mathematical principles to solve problems by mankind. And I think that's a really important thing that engineers are involved in, looking at problems and learning how to solve them, but also trying to predict what are those problems that might be there in the future and trying to look at how we might solve those problems. So engineers, I think, aim to improve quality of life in a way that is sustainable. And that word sustainable obviously is extremely important to everybody, but has always been important to engineering. And I think underlies most of what engineers do. We're looking at developing infrastructure, ways of delivering energy, ways of helping life, etc., in a way that is sustainable. So engineers are very much involved in trying to solve the problems of the future and the current problems, looking at how we can deal with consumption needs of billions of people. Engineers are deeply involved in energy supply and how that might be done in a way that is sustainable, that is sensitive towards the environment, but also sensitive towards our economic need. Engineers are very much involved in climate change and what we can do to mitigate against climate change, from civil engineers looking at delivery of infrastructure and ways of traveling, to mechanical and energy engineers looking at ways of delivering energy, to chemical engineers looking at how we develop products and different aspects there as well. Drinking water supply and flood control is something that engineers are involved in, food supply, and improving quality of life for an aging population. So engineers have a huge role to play in terms of not just design, but also in terms of improving quality of life. It's very important for our engineers to be able to use science and mathematics in their thinking. They're numerate, they're logical, they're good at problem solving, and that's a skill that many of your sons and daughters will be bringing into this. It might be a reason that they chose to do engineering initially, and it's something that we would hope to further improve and develop as they spend their time here, whether that's 3, 4, or 5 years with us. Engineers are analytical thinkers, and analytical thinking is framed by and used in the service of practical ends. But also, and I think this is something that people tend to forget with engineers need to be able to exhibit creativity. If we're looking for solutions to problems, then engineers need to be able to be creative about finding solutions and new ways of doing things. And also, we expect engineers to be leaders in the future. If we're going to be able to change the way we live, if we're going to be able to do things better, and if that's going to be done in a way that is logical and looks at proper solutions, engineers need to be able to do more than just develop those solutions. They have to be able to give the leadership to persuade people to take on those solutions. So what we will do for students in UCD and engineering is give them that technical understanding, very sound knowledge of disciplinary fundamentals, obviously a strong grasp of mathematics, but also we try to develop that capacity to be creative, to be innovative, and to apply theory and practice. We want them to be able to work effectively in a business environment. They need to be good communicators, something again that sometimes people don't always associate with engineering, but it's really important if you are an engineer to be able to communicate your technical message, your technical solutions to lay people, to politicians, to decision makers, etc. We need them to be able to work independently, but also to be able to work in teams, not just comprised of other engineers, but also in teams that include other professionals and other disciplines as well. And also engineers need to have a business awareness of what the implications of engineering decisions and investments are. So an engineer is also someone who has a lot of transferable skills. And I think this is quite important to remind you, because not every single person who goes through UCD engineering actually ends up working as an engineer. Our students tend to be in great demand by other types of companies and other industries as well, for example, finance, business, decision making, etc., because of the types of skills that has made them want to be an engineer initially, and because of the types of skills that we develop in them as we educate them through UCD. So again, that idea of being analytical, conceptual, problem solving, being good at planning and organization, having IT skills, numeracy, being able to do research and be able to show initiative, etc., are all things that make them good engineers, but they are also things that they can bring into other industries and make them good financiers, entrepreneurs, business people as well. So qualified engineers are sought across a wide range of sectors, as I said, management consulting, IT, finance, technical sales, marketing, writing, operations, and logistics. So I'm going to end there, and I think, Deborah, you have a video to show before we move on to our next speaker.
I'll just stop it there, Aoife, because it's nearly finished anyway, but it just paused there towards the end.
No problem. I think everybody saw the building
Yeah.
for the most part anyway. So we'll hand over to Neil for your part.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Aoife. I'll just share my presentation. Yeah. Okay. So good evening, everyone. My name is Neil Murphy, and I'm the Program Director of DN 150, which is first year engineering. I'm based in the School of Mechanical and Materials Engineering. So that's my main job in this place. I don't actually teach first years, but I sort of coordinate first year, if you know what I mean. It's nice as well that the students have one point of contact in the academic staff that they can always approach. So I'm always there if there's any academic issues that if you like they're worried about or whatever. So I just always encourage people to send me an email and we can meet or whatever. So I just want to try and tell you today, I want to take you through some of the various degree pathways that your kids will be faced with, and just to give you some idea of the kind of opportunities really, and the wide range of degree programs that are on offer in UCD, and also a little bit about their career choices then at the end. So I suppose most of the certainly the ambitious people in the class will be aiming to become ultimately a chartered engineer, which is really the professional qualification, if you like. I suppose most of us have heard of chartered accountants. Maybe we haven't all heard of chartered engineers, but it's an equivalent thing. And in order to become, for our graduates to become chartered engineers, they, as you can see there, well, the body that awards these qualifications, these professional qualifications, is called Engineers Ireland, and there's obviously a very strict set of guidelines and set of requirements that students need or graduates need in order to become chartered engineers. So one of them, of course, is to complete a degree program, which is accredited by Engineers Ireland, and all of our programs are accredited by Engineers Ireland. Apart from that, the graduate must have a minimum of 4 years experience after graduating with their primary degree. And in practice, possibly the easiest way of fulfilling the educational requirement for a chartered engineer is to have a master's degree, or equivalent, as they say in the guidelines here. So with that in mind, UCD Engineering offer quite a wide variety of both bachelor's and master's degrees. So this can be a little bit mind-blowing for people when they see it at the beginning, because there are quite a lot of different degree programs. So our traditional degree program was a 4-year Bachelor of Engineering degree. That would have been all that was available really when I did my degree back in the 80s. Nowadays, it's more common really, we still offer the 4-year BE degree, but we also offer 5-year master's degrees. So it's basically that 5 years, the first 3 years are actually a Bachelor of BSc, a Bachelor of Science, Engineering Science, and then the last 2 of those 5 years are the official, if you like, master's curriculum. So so many students now will come in, as your kids have done, and they will stay here for 5 years, and they will leave with a master's degree, an ME degree. So there are a couple of different variations here, but typically most people will graduate with their master's, and they'll also get a Bachelor of Science. So they've got these 2 degrees after putting in, if you like, their 5 years. There are a couple of different variations, but that's they're the main ones really. Now, so this is quite a complicated picture here, and what we're trying to show you here is the different pathways to the final degrees. So here we are. Your sons and daughters are here in year 1, and as you can see, we've got a range of what we call core modules, core sort of areas that they study. So all the things you might expect, things like physics and chemistry and mathematics, engineering computing, mechanics, electronics, energy engineering and design, as well as a range of options and electives. Now, at the end of their first year, the student has to decide which of the engineering streams, the main engineering streams, they would like to enter in second year. And that's a big decision for them. And in order to help them make that decision, we put on information sessions, usually around the latter half of the trimester, typically maybe for an hour at lunchtime or something like that. And we'll get speakers to come in and explain, for example, what their typical career is like in mechanical engineering or chemical engineering or whatever. And usually by the end of the year, the students are in a good position to make their mind up. They know they want to be a biomedical engineer or whatever. So then they move into those streams, and in stage 2 and 3, or their second and third year, they'll be in one of these main boxes, if you like. And then at the end of the third year, they have to make their decision whether they want to go on and do a 4-year Bachelor's of Engineering or the Master's of Engineering. So we have these different decision points, if you like, that have to be made along the way. So, look at the large range here of master's programs, for example, that are available to the students, a huge range of different areas. So here's a list of the degree options that you can specialize in, and I'll let you read through it yourselves, but there are more or less all the main types of engineering are catered for. This one here is quite a recent one, actually, optical engineering. You might not have even thought there was such a thing. Just to give you an idea of the way that most students in more recent times have split, if you like, at the end of first year. You can see here that the most popular one last year was, in fact, mechanical engineering. That's not always the case, but that was just the way it was this year. And you can see that the others are fairly even numbers, really, going into chemical engineering, biomedical, electronic, and so on. And I suppose when you consider the combination of civil and structural, you can see those two bars would actually rise even higher than some of these other ones. So civil engineering is very much on the comeback as well. So the sort of teaching approach in UCD, obviously lots of lectures. Typically, many modules will have 3 lectures a week, typically the 2 or 3 lectures a week. They will also attend laboratories. So something like, more or less every module, most modules anyway, would have laboratories, things like physics and chemistry and so on. Typically the students will attend maybe 5 or 6 laboratory sessions in physics and chemistry. Also then, of course, we've got these tutorials, which are like smaller group teaching. We've got projects, we've got design exercises and so on. So it's a combination of many types of learning. So the way we kind of measure the workload associated with a particular module is using this business of credits. Okay, so we have these things called the European Credit Transfer System, ECTS, which is like a currency really across Europe. So if you do a 5-credit module in Dublin, it should be equivalent to doing one in Berlin, for example. And just to give you an idea, so all of the modules that your sons and daughters are doing this year are 5-credit modules. And if you look at the detail of that, typically between everything, between attending lectures and labs and so on, and their personal study that we expect them to do on each module, you can see that each module corresponds to around 100 to 120 hours of effort. So that's a lot of work. And if you sort of add that all up, basically it does kind of average around 40 hours per week of overall effort. And the reason we're pointing that out, I suppose, is that there isn't an awful lot of time left for example, going off and getting part-time jobs, having great social life and so on. Okay, so it's a busy program. So the important thing, I suppose, is for students not to overstretch themselves. That sort of assessment, it used to be, in the old days, it used to be mainly exams, the end, but now things are a little bit different. We have a range of different assessment types. We have continuous assessment where they might, for example, be taking quizzes, multiple choice quizzes, for example, at different stages throughout the trimester. They might have, design projects to do and so on, labs to attend and what have you. At the end of the trimester, the exams are typically 2 hours long, and they will typically take place in the RDS in Ballsbridge or in Blackrock in our exam centre there. Just for your own records, the exams start this year on the 10th of December and they run up to the 22nd. And then in the spring trimester, as you can see, the exams start on the 3rd of May to the 14th of May. In the next trimester, the students will have a week or a couple of weeks of revision or study period between the 7th and 20th of March. But that is not the case in this current trimester because there isn't enough time between, if you like, the leaving cert being released and Christmas and exams and so on. So there isn't actually time to have a week off, unfortunately, in the middle of this trimester. If the student fails a module, they have an opportunity to take it again. The jargon here is that they can either resit the module, typically the next trimester, and that means they don't attend any lectures because they have all their notes and so on. So they study their notes and they take an assessment, usually an exam, and if they pass it, then that's great. Alternatively, they could do a full repeat of the module where they would attend lectures all over again, do all the work again, and try the whole thing, if you like, for a second time. So they would be the two ways of remediating a failed module. Okay, yeah. Now, one of the very popular aspects of the program is our study abroad in 3rd year. Now, not everybody does this, but it is very popular. It's increasingly popular that students like to go away to a partner university during stage 3 or 3rd year. Some go for 1 trimester, some want to go for a full year. And you can see here with our little place markers that we actually have quite a wide variety and wide range of partners, institutions, universities that we send our students to. Just to point out that we don't allow students who are struggling academically to go abroad. We feel that we really only allow the stronger students to do that because often, if they were to go and then face extra challenges of being away from home, maybe with a different language and so on, they would even struggle more. So therefore, we do set an academic kind of threshold that must be achieved before they be allowed do this year abroad. Okay, again, this is a little bit down the road, but typically they might be either Erasmus exchange within Europe, but we also have the exchanges outside of Europe. So typically the United States, Canada, China, Singapore, Australia, and so on. Now, in terms of careers, of course, there's plenty of opportunities, but there's a couple of things that we do within UCD to get students ready, if you like, for graduation and having their careers. The first important thing to mention is that if the students do an ME, the ME, 5-year ME degree, in their penultimate year, typically in their 4th year, we organize academic internships for them. And those internships are extremely valuable part of the program. And they will typically spend maybe 6-7 months in a company. And we of course have learning outcomes and so on associated with that internship. And there they will have like an industry sort of supervisor looking after them. And we also allocate a member of the academic staff to also be to keep an eye on things as well for each student. There are 4 annual recruitment fairs, which are attended by, as you can see, 160 or more employers. The employers are generally, all competing for the good students, and they're all trying to, they all present presentations and so on to try and persuade the students to come to them. Again, one important aspect of university life, of course, is the clubs and societies that we offer. And this has always been the case, of course, in UCD. We have a huge range of different clubs and societies to cater for everybody's interests. There's also opportunities to do volunteering, both at home and abroad. Now, the internships, again, they're probably worth just spending another minute or two on. The typical internship, well, as you see, it ranges from 3 to 8 months. Your typical internship would be, I think, around 6 to 7 months. And it's a really, really valuable part of the whole education. We find that students come back completely changed, if you like, with a completely different, more professional attitude when they return from their work placement. And then they spend their last year and their final year of their master's, of course, back in UCD, and they'll do their research project and write their thesis. And very often they'll take back a project from the company that they were in, so that the project is actually done with, if you like, through the company as well, or with the company's support. So, at the end of it all, well, the students, while they're in their internship, they have to keep a diary, and they have to write a report and basically explain what they've been doing, and what they've got out of the internship, and how they personally what personal achievements they've done, and what personal learning and so on they've achieved. So that's all very well structured. Okay, obviously, many of the world's leading companies are based here in Ireland, so lots of our graduates go straight into employment, either here or abroad. We offer, or our students can command very competitive salaries compared to many of the other professions. And some, of course, decide that they would rather continue in college for a further 3 or 4 years and actually do something like a PhD. So again, back in my day, PhDs were considered to be very unusual in engineering, but now it's not so unusual. And indeed, many of the jobs that the research type jobs in companies actually require a PhD. We all know the sort of main industries that are in Ireland at the moment, but I suppose great opportunities exist in energy, healthcare, the environment. Our main strong industrial sectors in bioengineering, biochemicals, pharmaceuticals, electronics, communication, software, and so on. And again, our wide range of programs allows students to sort of specialize in all of these areas, and they're in prime position then for employment in those areas. Here's just a few of the company logos that our students have ended up in, and I think it's kind of interesting to sort of see the huge breadth of different companies here. I mean, Intel, for example, you mightn't think that a mechanical engineer would end up in Intel. You'd have to be an electronic engineer, but that's not the case. They take on loads of mechanical engineers, but not only traditional engineering companies, as Aoife was mentioning there, they often, because of the skill set of our graduates, many end up in finance, management consulting, as well as pharma, pharmaceuticals. Actually, one of my own PhD graduates, who did his PhD, believe it or not, on the mechanical fracture properties of diamonds, ended up working in Paddy Power when he graduated. Not behind the counter, of course, but because he was particularly strong at statistics. That company was, they headhunted him, if you like, and he's now happily working there. So plenty of opportunities. Plenty of opportunities there for all our students. Okay, so I'll stop sharing now, and I'll hand you over to our student advisor, Dr. Julia Marr.
Thanks, Neil. And good evening, and lovely to meet you all virtually. I'm just going to take a moment and share my screen. Hold on. Apologies. Bear with me there. Okay, looks like it's working now. Right, so my name is Julia Marr. I am the student advisor for the College of Engineering and Architecture. And my role is that I support students in the college from the time they're in stage 1, when they first begin, all the way through to the top programs and across all of the programs within the college. There are student advisors attached to all programs in UCD, and we are here to support students, to answer questions, and to connect students with any of the other supports around UCD. So why might a student contact a student advisor, and what do they talk to us about? Really, a student can come and talk to me about anything that's on their mind. They can have a chat if they're stressed, if they're concerned about something, if they're not quite sure where to go with a question and they just want to have a conversation with a member of staff. They can certainly come and talk to me. I support students with academic concerns. So if they're feeling particularly stressed or they want to talk about time management, I can support them with that. I talk to students about their well-being, and really that's been a big focus over the last few years is to think about self-care and minding yourself throughout your college career. I support students through a process called extenuating circumstances, which I'll chat a little bit about later. I talk to students who are concerned about financial difficulties, and there are some financial supports in UCD that the student advisors kind of facilitate as well. So that's come up. There are funds that are now being released this week to students, and that's been sort of a flurry of emails. So that's one of the things we do. And also, hopefully this will never come up for your student while they're in UCD, but if they are ever facing disciplinary issues, I would support them through that process. So one thing that's important to know about the support that I offer and the service that I offer to students is that it is a confidential support. So students can come and talk to me, and what we talk about stays between us unless I have permission to share that information with a third party, or whether or not if we agree that it's in the best interest of the student that I help them to contact, say, colleagues in the college office or a member of academic staff. Otherwise, what we talk about stays between us. And I think that's really important to know. Sometimes I get an email or a concerned phone call from a parent, but unless I have permission from a student, I can give you information generally about the supports that are on offer in UCD or the supports that I offer, but I can't talk about a specific student's situation without their express permission. So please bear that in mind, be patient with me. I don't mind getting phone calls from parents. I appreciate you're often concerned about your son or daughter, but please keep in mind that what we talk about and whether or not we have ever met stays between us. So it's good to know. And I think it's also, it's an important thing for students to know that if they come and talk to me, that what we chat about stays between us. So common transition issues that a lot of stage 1 students might be facing. Students wonder an awful lot where they belong and how they fit into UCD and college life. They might face difficulties developing new learning techniques or learning habits. It might be a very different way to how they learned in secondary school, and that's an adjustment for them. Some students might find it difficult leaving home for the first time. Other students might find it difficult or kind of facing new challenges that they haven't left home yet, and they're sort of balancing their new independence with living at home as well. Some students face personal challenges. Independent living with roommates for the very first time is frequently something that comes up. Making new friends and keeping old. Coping with new challenges, and also sometimes financial challenges and learning how to budget and manage their own finances. So as I mentioned, there are plenty of supports available to students, and it's a good thing for your students to know about the resources that are available. Certainly, if a student comes and talks to me and they're not sure where to go within the university, these might be some of the supports that I would point them towards, or we might talk about in a conversation. So it's good to know what is available to students in UCD. So there is a UCD health centre on campus with GPs and nurses and a variety of different health services, and they can take students by appointment. During COVID, I think they were also offering online appointments too, so just to make sure that students could continue to access that service. There is a UCD student counselling service, and the counselling service is free to all UCD students, and students can refer themselves. They can book in for an appointment if they wish. So again, it's a really important support to know about on campus. We have chaplains, so the chaplaincy is another support, and they also offer confidential support and pastoral care and student direction. There is UCD Access and Lifelong Learning, so students who might be seeking disability support, who might wish to take part in the laptop loan scheme. So if they're in need of a laptop while they're in university, there is a scheme this year carried over from last year where students can borrow a laptop for the duration of their course. And it is worth looking into for any students who are in that position. They might not have a laptop of their own yet. And they also run academic skills workshops on things like time management, exam prep, and they're really helpful, I suppose, techniques to pick up and workshops to take a look at. There's also the UCD Writing Centre, and I know Neil had also mentioned the UCD Maths Support Centre. They're both really important supports for students, especially coming into university, who might, be facing challenges with modules they haven't, or subjects they haven't encountered before. And it's free one-to-one tuition offered on campus. There are also financial supports that I mentioned. So the student advisors facilitate I suppose two main funds, the Student Support Fund and the Student Welfare Fund. So for any student who is facing financial difficulties, it's worth taking a look at those funds. I've just sent emails out last week about those two funds in particular. So, if that's something that's come up at home, you might point your son or daughter in the direction of that email and ask them to take a look. And they're always welcome to get in touch with me if they have questions, if it's something they'd like to chat about. UCD also offers students access to something called Silver Cloud, which is an online platform for students who might be looking for support. Silver Cloud is free to any UCD student, and it's there to support students who might be struggling with some symptoms of anxiety, symptoms of depression, or with stress. And I think it's a platform we got a lot of positive feedback about over the last 18 months, where students maybe were away from campus and weren't quite sure where to look for support. Like I said, it is free to all UCD students. It's available 24 hours a day, and it is a resource worth looking. Your student might be interested in looking into if at some point during their college career they find that that's something that they're struggling with or they'd like more information about. So I'd also mentioned extenuating circumstances. What happens if a student is sick and has to miss college due to personal reasons? Again, this is a support that's worth knowing about. Students may never need to apply for extenuating circumstances over the course of their degree, or something may come up where they find they have serious personal circumstances like an illness or something that's happened within the family, bereavement, and they do need to apply either to have an extension and an assessment, or if they've missed something and they need to have, I suppose, an official record of that and receive permission to get that extension or to miss an exam. So there is a way of applying for extenuating circumstances on the UCD system. It's called the Student SysWeb system, and evidence is required if a student needs to apply for extenuating circumstances. Again, if that comes up at any point during your student's university career, they can certainly come and talk to me and colleagues in the college office about how to apply and what they need to do in order to make that application. I would also note that things that are not included in extenuating circumstances could be being in a band, employment instead of class. So if they're working long hours in a part-time job and that impacts on the time that they have to do their coursework, or a failure to plan a study schedule. So what can you do? And sometimes this is the question that I get if I get a phone call or an email from a parent. What can parents and guardians do to support their stage 1 student? I think first and foremost, listen to your student and to give them time to talk about what their experience is in university, what they're going through, what they're learning. So really just to provide a listening ear and to let them know that you know, you're there for them, you know, if they feel like they're ready to talk about their college experience. Encourage your student to discuss issues with university staff. I'm here without judgment, and from my perspective, there is no silly question. You know, any question is game when you're new to a university, new to the college, new to your course. If you knew everything there was to know, you would have been through the course already, and you'd come back to the start. There is so much to learn about UCD as a university, about the college experience, and certainly, you know, students are welcome to drop in at any point or to get in touch if there's something that they're not clear about, there's something they want to talk through. So please do feel free to point them in my direction. And if it's not me, if it's something to do with registration, there's the college office, and we would work closely together, you know, to answer students' questions and to support students. Take a deep breath. Stage 1 won't last forever. You know, it is a new experience, and it can feel a little bit overwhelming at the very start. But you know, as the year continues, for many students, the year starts to fly by, and before they know it, they're in stage 2, and they've learned an awful lot about themselves and about their course. And you know, as well, for your own information, if you'd like to pass along my details, I am always taking meetings by appointment with students. And I have meeting options this year, so I am offering in-person appointments, and I'm also holding on to Zoom appointments. Some students actually find they like the flexibility to meet online, or to talk by phone, or to meet on Google Hangouts. So I'm very much available, and I will meet students as quickly as I can if they do request an appointment. So do feel free to pass along my details if you think your student might like to come in and have a chat. And finally, just to say, really, I'm here to offer support. Your son or daughter may not feel the need to come in and talk to me this year or this semester or this week, but I'm here to support them throughout their time at UCD, throughout, you know, all the way to the end of their degree. They may find in stage 3, something comes up, they want to come in and have a chat, they're interested in learning more about supports. So I think the most important thing I would say to take away from this is that I'm around. I'm here to support students during their time at UCD and in the College of Engineering and Architecture. So thanks for your time.
Thanks, Julia. So I think we're now going to open up to some questions, if we have any.
It's very quiet at the moment, Aoife, on the Q&A.
Yes, I noticed that. So obviously everything has been answered in the presentations already. Now, if anyone has any questions, could you type them into the Q&A, and we'll try to deal with them here. Give people a couple of minutes, Deborah, to let them try to think about something that they might want to ask. I don't think we're going to get anything. Oh, there's one open question. So there was a question from someone asking that the session be replayed. Just letting you know that we've got this recorded on YouTube already. So that it will be available on YouTube on the UCD. What is the name of the YouTube channel again, Deborah? Can you remind me? It's the.
Bear with me a second. Well, we can send it on.
Yeah, we could put that into the answer where the YouTube channel is. So that will be available if you missed any. There's a question about, does every student get their preferred choice of option at the end of stage 1? We don't operate a quota system. So students get the choice that they make at the end of stage 1 is the one that they get. There's always a little proviso subject to health and safety, but generally speaking, every student gets their option. In terms of students being, I see a question about being overwhelmed with the workload, and does this ease at all? Neil, you might jump in on this as well, but I would say that engineering is always quite a heavy workload, and always has been a program that is quite intense. On the other hand, because of that, they are more engaged with academics throughout the year rather than it being all at the very, very end. But if your son or daughter is finding it difficult or is finding something overwhelming, my main piece of advice would be to engage with the module coordinators, in particular in the modules where they are having difficulty, as soon as possible, to make them aware of the fact that they're having difficulties, rather than leave it till the end of the semester or the trimester when we get into the exam session. They will not be alone in terms of struggling, but they are more likely to be able to get help if they go to a module coordinator as soon as possible to look at the particular aspects. Neil, did you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I think it's typical that people find some people find first year harder, believe it or not, than other years. Because, you know, your son may not have done many of the modules like physics or whatever in the Leaving Cert. And so he might say, well, these are all new to me, whereas the person I'm sitting beside has done some of those already. So, but that does then, you know, even out. And in second year, if you like, everyone's starting from the same, if you like, same page. And I do find people generally say that things get easier. They find things easier as the years go on, which maybe seems a bit strange, a bit of a contradiction, but that is the way. But I think Aoife's right in the sense that to encourage your son to talk to the lecturer, either email them, or if they don't get a reply quickly enough, they can always just go up to them after class and say, you know, can I make an appointment to have a chat with you? Because I think that's the best way. Talking is always the best, approach.
Mm-hmm. And there's a question on what is the typical pass rate in first year. I think the vast majority of our stage 1 students do pass everything. Yeah.
Yes, correct. Yes, yeah. They're very low failure rates in first year, particularly.
Yeah. Then are there tutorials for computing for those students who don't have computing experience?
There are access to courses through the computer center through IT services. So I can put a link in there just in relation to, you know, IT type support.
Okay. Do you recommend students to do an engineering type job in summertime or take a break? Well, I'll answer from a personal perspective first, then, and then Neil, if you have a different one, you might give yours. I think if a student can get an engineering type job in the summertime, I think it's a fantastic opportunity to take, particularly if it exposes them to, you know, learning about different types of engineering disciplines, and maybe helps them to make decisions about which ones that they want to do later on. So I think it's a great idea if they can do it. Obviously, it's nice for them to take some downtime in the summer as well and take a break, but I do think it's a good idea to do. Neil?
Yeah, I'd agree. But again, I suppose, you know, I think kids are under a lot of pressure as well nowadays. I asked some of the fourth years to talk to the first years, and I must say I was overwhelmed by some of the CVs that the fourth years had clocked up in their 4 years in terms of, you know, all the summer jobs in great companies and all the rest of it. And I suppose that's fantastic, but maybe not all students probably are as dynamic as that. So, you know, I think a little bit of balance as well. If they don't want to, if they feel they need a break, there's nothing wrong with that either.
Thank you. So then we have student long days and exams at end of day remain on in library to do these. Can tests be included in college day? Well, I think there are scheduling issues around a lot of that, because not every student is doing the same set of modules and programs. So sometimes exams happen because that's the only time they do fit. I know what you mean, that engineering, again, acknowledge it is a long day, especially if they've got friends doing, you know, something in the humanities, they may see that. But it does get, I think the days do actually get shorter once you get beyond first year, once you get into your own discipline and start to specialize a bit more. There's a little bit more flexibility to the day as they go through the program. So as Julia was saying earlier, do take a deep breath. First year does end. It's a great year, first year, but it can be almost one of the most challenging of years, I would say, when you're going through. There's a question about our results and opportunity to see answers to assignments. Students should receive feedback on all assignments. We have rules about the timeline in which they should receive feedback on assignments. So again, if they're not getting that feedback on a module assignment, they should ask a module coordinator, but all students should be getting feedback and on any assignments that they hand in. Okay. if they're making their choice in second year, can they change their mind if they have made the wrong choice? Yes, within limits. Okay, so obviously, you can't get to the end of second year then change your mind, but we always have people who are here in end of September, early October, and realize mechanical wasn't for me. I really want to do electronic or etc. And at that point, it is possible to shift around and move around. What are the roles? Sorry, Deborah, go ahead.
I might just add to that, Aoife, and say that, if a student completes even stage 2 of civil engineering and then decides on a change in pathway to mechanical, they could change their discipline. It may take them longer to get their degree, so instead of taking 4 years, it may take 4.5 years because they won't have all the essential learning. Yeah. But we can certainly carve out something for them. But it's just slightly more complicated and possibly slightly more costly for a student.
So I think that the message in that is, if any time a student is unhappy or feels uncomfortable in this area, don't just struggle away. Come and speak to us, because there may be pathways or movement around or ways of getting them to a place where they are happier. So don't just sit there, not talking to anyone about the issue. There are always solutions. Question on what is the role of the class representatives? So the class representatives are elected within each year. They sit on something called a staff student committee, and that committee is, for example, chaired by myself, and that's where the students have an opportunity to talk to me and to other academics from across the programme and from all the different disciplines about challenges they might be facing. So, for example, last year we would have had a lot of time talked about how they were getting on with online assessment or how they were finding the whole online teaching environment. But we have those meetings in normal times as well, and it can range from problems from something like a physical space not being particularly comfortable, to not having access to enough space to be able to do projects or studies, to a problem with a particular module. And it's where we have an opportunity to discuss that and see if we can come up with solutions. And Neil sits on that along with quite a few other academics there as well. Yeah, and Julia, you organised the elections for that in the first year. This year we got a huge number of students wanting to do it, which is interesting because often we struggle to get some of the students wanting to do this role. It's a really important role for those students. Okay, we have another question about the pass rate. So it's very high. Most of our students in stage 1 pass. It's very, very unlikely to not get through the stage 1. The question that's similar to the question we had on physics: if a student did not do chemistry and leaving cert, can they get help? Again, the chemistry module is designed to allow for the fact that many of the students won't have done chemistry, because I think I'm correct in saying that most of our students will not have done physics and chemistry. Most will come in with only one laboratory science. So nearly everybody has an issue with one of those subjects. And so the modules are designed to try to bring people from nothing to knowing about chemistry and physics. Now, that means it can move quite quickly at times. So again, as Deborah had said with the person asking the question about physics, please talk to the module coordinator if they're struggling. There are things that can be done. There are things that can be done to help that person. And they are not the first student to have gone through that. So the module coordinator won't be totally taken aback or shocked by someone coming up and saying, I need a little bit of extra help, or I need a little bit more support with this module. Neil, is there anything I should add to that?
Yeah, I mean, when I talk to the students on day 1, I often say, help each other as well, because if your friend has done chemistry for the leaving and you haven't, it's a nice idea to help each other and to, maybe you're better at one thing than that person is, and so on. But yeah, I mean, the way that chemistry, for example, is set up, half of the module kind of covers the same ground as the leaving cert, but the other half is new for everybody. So that's, I suppose, to give everybody a challenge, even if they haven't, or even if they have done chemistry already.
Yeah. So we've got a question on what are tutorials for, to see how answer was calculated, for example, volume of C assignment. So I'm not aware of what the actual assignment was that you're mentioning there, but generally what tutorials are for is working through examples in smaller groups than you would have in a lecture, and that they're actually working on practical examples within the tutorial rather than a lecture, which I think I would describe more as where information is being imparted to the student. Tutorials an opportunity to work with that information on different types of problems. Yeah, I think that's the way most, sometimes individually, sometimes a lot of the time actually in groups, and that's where the students get to do that peer-to-peer learning as well as the lecturer student learning in those tutorial groups. And they can be a bit different to what they might have experienced in secondary school, but a really, really important part of the learning process. We have a question on, if a student does 3 years in mechanical, can they do an ME in structural engineering, for example? So Deborah, I think it'll be
And I
different.
would, it would be a much longer path for the student to follow, because they really would not have done some of the essential learning that's required to do a master's in structural engineering with architecture or any of the other ones. So I suppose we designed the programs so specifically. You know, there are a few MEs for some undergraduate majors, but it's not entirely flexible. So it's not impossible, but again, it may mean taking an additional year or year and a half in this case, so that a student covers the essential learning in preparation for the ME of their choice. Yeah. Really, the message is, you know, think very carefully in the stages that you are being asked to make a decision on them.
Yeah, I think maybe what that person, and just I think what they're probably getting at is how much flexibility is there to move around. There's certain amount of, if someone makes a mistake, that we can help them. They might have to go back a little bit and restart things again to get to the right place. But generally speaking, for example, if you go into mechanical engineering, you're going to be then filtered into various different sub-disciplines of mechanical engineering. You can't just hop around from one engineering discipline to another, because as you go deeper into the program, they become much more specialized, and there are different modules that become prerequisites for later on in the program. So it is better to think about those decisions early on. There's a question then that this is an interesting one. What is the kind of topic that Neil would deal with, which Julia wouldn't? Neil, you might want to give an idea of the kind of things you deal with, and then we might ask Julia to talk about what she might deal with.
Sure. Well, I mean, for example, last year, some students did struggle very, very badly with the whole isolation and so on, you know, because everything was online. And so we did have a number of students who failed quite a number, if not nearly all of their modules. And, you know, I met with all of those students and advised them on the path, if you like, the best path for them to take now, you know, in the coming year. So we'd go through their various modules, and obviously the thing is to try and make sure that they you know, get back on track as soon as possible, but yet don't overload themselves or whatever. So between us, myself and the student, we would discuss exactly what the best package of modules to take should be, you know, for this trimester and so on. And I'm sure they probably met with Julia as well, but my focus really was on the academic modules and, you know, trying to advise them as best I could.
Julia, you might want to jump in.
Yeah, sure. So I'm not an engineer to start out with, so there are certainly things that I would refer on to academic staff and that I can't answer, you know, around specific learning or the contents of a module. Students, like I said, come and talk to me about just about anything, and that's fine. You know, that's what a student advisor is there to do, is to listen and to support them. And if it's the case that you know, we have a chat and they need to go and have a conversation then with Neil about their modules, about their academics, I might put them directly in contact with a module coordinator or member of staff. If something comes up and it has to do with registration or questions about credits, you can put them in contact with colleagues in the college office. But, you know, really, students might come and talk to me about homesickness, about, you know, how to manage their time, how to manage workload, how to manage stress. If there are aspects of the university that they would like to know more about, some of the other supports that I mentioned, we might chat about that. But really, when students book in, I kind of have the expectation they could be coming in to talk to me about just about anything, and that's fine. Like I said, there are no silly questions. I'm here to answer those questions, to support them and be there for them. So a very broad church, I would say, and you never know what might come through the door in terms of a question. But yeah.
So there are some questions that are repeating that I think we've already answered about, for example, the chemistry and physics. And what we're saying there is to go to speak to the module coordinator initially. They will not be surprised here that there are some students who struggle. It happens every year because there are always students who come in without physics or chemistry and sometimes need a little bit of support or help from each other in those areas.
Yeah. Sorry, if I could, I just jump in as well here that even though we talked about the Maths Support Centre, many of the people who work there are postgrads in science and so on, to, you know, helping the students. And I did hear recently enough that there are a lot of those people, for example, would be very good on physics as well. So, you know, even though it's called the Maths Support Centre, if you're struggling with physics, I would certainly go along there as well and ask the question, could anybody help me with some of these physics issues I'm having? Because it's quite likely that they will get help there on that, you know. So don't just go by the label of math support.
Yeah. So I don't think we've any other new questions since I last looked, Deborah. Have I think and you were answering some of the other ones there in the background as well, typing yourself and Shelley.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. No, I don't see any new have come to the bottom here. So hopefully we have answered.
Okay. Okay, so I think I just finished by obviously thanking my colleagues for helping out this evening, and thank you as well for taking the time to come along this evening online to hear a little bit more about engineering. The one thing that I would like to leave you with is to talk to your sons and daughters about what they're doing in engineering. Remember, they are adults, so obviously at times it's a change in relationship to the relationship you might have had with the school, with the relationship you have here. And Julia touched on that as well. We're always here, we're always available, but we have our relationship is with the student who is the adult at this point. And I know sometimes that can be difficult. I know myself, I will probably find it difficult in a year or so when my own son comes into university, hopefully, to deal with that. Probably even harder when I'm hanging around UCD and can catch people. But anyway, what I was going to say, just remember that aspect of it. But if your son or daughter at any point is struggling, or if they find that they are in difficulty or have concerns, whether they are academic, emotional, social, any of those, please talk to them as much as possible and encourage them to reach out to us, whether it's Julia or myself or Neil or any of the other academic staff or colleagues in the college office. The earlier they reach out to us, the sooner that they tell us that they have a problem, the more we can do to help them and the more we can do to stop that problem getting bigger. So it's really the message what I want to leave with all of you today, to get them to come to us. We are not here to make difficulties or create obstacles for them. We are here to try to help them to get through this program, because what we want is that they are successful and that they're happy in the program here in engineering. So please encourage them to talk to us. We're all available. Thank you very much this evening again, and thank you to my colleagues for giving their time this evening. Okay.